Hey, thanks for tuning in. This is a video about Annabelle, Siberian Husky that we adopted from a county animal shelter in Van Nuys, California. It's about 4 months ago, so we've had her about 4 months. And I wanted to share what the experience has been like, the good, the bad, the ugly, and maybe share some mistakes that we made. One in particular that nearly cost her her life the second day we had her, and that's no joke. So hopefully you'll stay to the end of the video to watch that part of the story. But this is Annabelle. They called her Susie in the shelter because she was brought in as a stray. And so this is Annabelle, and this is the kinds of things she does. So this is what happens when she knows I'm getting ready to take her on a walk. She doesn't usually make any sounds throughout the day. Okay, yes. All right. I guess typically she's vocal, but for Annabelle, it's only when she's getting ready for a walk. She gets super excited. Other than that, she's pretty quiet. And she loves her walk. Her daily walk that she does with me, usually it's about 2 miles on the trails around our house, is the best part of our day. And she gets super excited. We'd heard also that huskies are some are quiet, some are loud, but Annabelle has not really been a loud barker and not a very good watchdog. We've only heard her bark 3 times that we've had her in 4 months. I just heard her bark. Good job. Yes. Oh, Raul's here. Okay. There he is. Hey, we got a bark out of you. And that was one of those 3 times. So we don't have to worry about her barking all the time. She didn't really know what to do with any of the toys that we bought her. So that little yellow thing on her doggy bed there, she doesn't know what to do with it even now. And the other toys, she just kind of looked at them. Even meat bones, like rib bones or T-bone steak bones, we gave it to her and she didn't really know what to do with it. But she does like the deer antler. That's what she has there in her paws. And we had heard that dogs like those things, so we bought one and she has taken to it. I'd read somewhere that huskies don't like to walk on trails or go up on, into the mountains, and we have these hills around our house, and that hasn't been the case with her. She just loves it. And I guess one of the things I've learned is like there's so much like misinformation out there about huskies, and they tend to make all these stereotypes and these sort of like global tendencies, to expect that they're going to jump over your fence and that they're going to tear up your house if you leave them alone, that you shouldn't leave them alone, and that they're divas and they can't be trained and blah blah blah. And I guess with any animal, some are going to have some things that fit the stereotype and some things not so much. And I think we have to treat animals as individuals and give them the love and attention that they deserve, and let them be who they are and what their personality is. And in our case, there's some things that she does that are typical. She howls, and some things not so typical. And so I think just learning, what she does and learning who she is has been like one of the most gratifying parts of having a husky in the house. And it's been mostly good. She adjusted really well for being a stray that they literally found running around the street in South LA, and she was in the county shelter for 4 months. But she had such a nice disposition, which I think is the reason why they didn't euthanize her. We trained her really quick. I wanted her to go in and out from the house to the backyard to go potty, and she learned how to use the doggy doors literally in one day. So she must have had an owner at some point because she was house trained. She has never had an accident in the house, thank goodness. And they say that, huskies, we heard, can't be trained, but that hasn't been our experience. Sit. Good. Stay. Come. Excellent job. Annabelle, come. Come. Sit. Good job. Excellent job. Okay. So I don't know. She may have had an order before, but that little come back on command thing has been important for her to learn because the couple days after we brought her in the house, she escaped. She got out of the front door when it was open, and she ran away. And we had heard that that's what happens. And so I had to run and get her and literally pick her up and bring her back home. But training her to come back on command, I think, has been really important because a couple months ago, she was outside. She slipped out and she was outside for 10 minutes. And I walked to the driveway and just said, Annabelle, come. And she came running back. So that's been good. And she has responded to training. Maybe she had an owner at some point, but they told us that she was a stray when we got her. And the bad parts about having Annabelle around has not really been the things that we expected. Not things like tearing up the house or the fur all over. There's certainly fur all over, but I don't really care about that and don't consider it to be a bad thing. And she hasn't torn up our house. She's not a chewer. She has not been destructive. She doesn't dig. She hasn't tried to jump over our fences. The bad was some of our initial interactions with some of the volunteers at the Van Nuys shelter. One lady in particular, when I was walking around the cages and I saw Annabelle and I was kind of up there near the cage, and she seemed to have a really good disposition and she was interacting with me. So I asked a volunteer if I can take her to the little area where you can walk them around and get to know them. And she said, have you ever owned a Husky, sir? And I said, no, but we had a dog for 14 years. She snapped back, that's not what I asked, sir. And she proceeded to say, like, you don't want a Husky, there are problems. And I said, look, just go get me another volunteer who will help me. Yes.
Oh, Susie, cute. Oh, Susie.
And so that was Chris. And that was the first video that we took of her back at the end of February. And Chris was so wonderful and gracious and positive, and he listened to what we wanted, and he explained things about her and answered our questions. And because of that positive interaction, when I insisted on getting another volunteer other than that first lady, that's the reason why we ended up adopting her. And the other lady was just kind of putting me in that stereotype, like, you're one of those owners that just likes Huskies because they're cute, and they end up owners like you bring them back because they can't handle them. And I said, I understand that you've seen that, that's been your experience, and that's why there's so many Huskies in these animal shelters. But you know, give me some benefit of the doubt here that we've done our research and we've thought long and hard about it. You don't know that I'm retired, so I can be home all the time and take care of her. But she was just so negative. And the one thing she did also is she tried to pawn another dog off on us, and it was a pit bull, an intact female who was lactating, and she's like, this is the dog you want. I said, but that's not the dog I want. And she said, well, you know, that one's going to be trouble, and Huskies are going to do this and that, and unless you've owned a Husky before, I don't recommend. And I just said, oh my God. So I guess you gotta know what you want, advocate for yourself, and insist on, you know, working with people who are going to work with you. So the ugly of this story that I saved for the last portion of the video is something that happened in this car. I'm trying to retrace what happened that night. So this was the second night that we had Annabelle, and I insisted on taking her in the car. And so this was the car that she was in. She was in the back seat. And I knew from the car ride home from the shelter that she was very jittery in the car. Part of it, I think, was because we had her in a little cage, but she freaked out in there. She was whining the whole way, and she urinated on herself. And the big mistake I made was looking at her in terms of the way we used to be with our other dog, Jasmine. And we owned Jasmine for 14 years, and she was our family dog. Our kids grew up with her when they were little, and now they're in college, and she was just a beloved animal in our family. And I used to take her on car rides all the time. It was one of her favorite things to do. And so she loved riding in the car. She'd hop right up and ride. So I figured I'm going to do these same things with Annabelle. So that night, the second night we had her, it was about 9 o'clock at night, and I said, let's just go take her for a ride. So we got her in the car, and she was jittery and whining from the very start. So this is the road we were on, and I was going about 35 miles an hour. I can hear her whining in the back seat, and she was kind of jumping around in the seats, and I didn't realize that that window was open. And so it was about right here, past this road here, that she up and jumped out right here. I had somebody else in the car with me, and it was such a shock. I kind of looked at him and said, "Did that just happen?" And he's like, "Yep." And so he said that when she jumped out of that window, she hit the ground and she rolled over like 4 times, and then she just took off down this little area where all the dirt is. And she took off down the road. Now, this was 9 o'clock at night, so this isn't necessarily a busy road at that time of the night, but that intersection down there is. She just went running down this little area right here, and I watched her run all the way down to that intersection down there. If you could see it, I'm pointing at it. And thank goodness she stopped and turned around and came back. I guess she got scared for the cars that were turning, and she started running back towards us. And so when she started running back towards us here, I tried to grab her, and she sort of didn't let me get near her. So she ran past me, and she started trying to jump over these walls here. And I saw her looking and trying to peek over, and thank God she didn't, because we probably wouldn't have gotten her back. Thank goodness there was a car of people that saw what was happening. They pulled over right there, and they managed to corral her just over there by that telephone pole. They brought her back, and so we got her back in the car and put her in the back seat. We were kind of in a state of shock. I'm like, I cannot believe this is happening. She's probably injured. She could have gotten killed. We could have lost her. We brought her in the car and looked her over, and she did not have a scratch on her. Like, we could not believe it. We almost contemplated taking her back to the house and not telling anyone what happened. Obviously, we didn't do that, but looking back, I'm glad to have gotten through that incident unscathed. And I really can't believe that I tried to impose that expectation on her that I had for Jasmine and tried to rush her into doing something she wasn't ready for. I mean, I really should have known better. So this was our time to hit the reset button, and so we consulted with a local animal trainer who said we really shouldn't let her out of the house for the first 3 weeks, and to appreciate that she's been in 2 shelters and now she's in another stressful situation. Now you're having her do these things that she's not ready to do. Like, just let her settle in and acclimate to know her environment and her new space, and to get used to being with the family, and to know that she's loved and she's going to be cared for. And that's the most important thing. And I think that's why she's done really well since. She doesn't tear up the house, she doesn't dig in the backyard, she hasn't tried to jump over the fences like we were told, and she's done really well. And I know there are a lot of places that you can get animals, but I really advocate for going to the county shelters and giving them a look, because I think the neediest animals are there. And if you can wade through some of the opinions of some of the people there, and if you know what you want and know that you're ready and willing to do the work, you're going to be rewarded like we were. So thanks for hanging in with this video as long as you have, and I'm hoping to post some more videos about how our training's going and how we're doing just in general. So appreciate the view.